Welcome to the Ditch the Struggle podcast. I'm your host, Alana Rosso. I'm a graphic designer turned career and success coach who knew I could do better, but kept falling short of where I wanted to go. But after years of exploring personal and career development, business, money mindset, and energy work, I'm here to tell you that yes, you can move from stuck and defeated to empowered and confident. Ready to dive in? Awesome. Together, let's ditch the struggle. Hi, everyone. We have a conversation today with Georgie Darling. And yes, she is as amazing as her name. So who is Georgie? Georgie is a business strategy coach and freelance travel writer, passionate about helping female freelancers build confident, sustainable, and profitable businesses. Her journey began on an Indonesian island where she took a leap into freelancing after leaving her role as a branded content editor in London, England. Like many new freelancers, she struggled to assert her worth, battled imposter syndrome, and faced the challenges of building a business from scratch. Fast forward to today, and Georgie has built a thriving six-figure career on her terms, working with high-profile brands like TripAdvisor, Marriott Hotels, Elle, and The Guardian. Let's dive into the conversation. Okay, welcome, Georgie. I'm thrilled to have a conversation with you today.
Thank you. It's so nice to be on the podcast.
Yes. Okay, so take me right back to the beginning of your life, your kind of corporate life, before you started your amazing career as a freelance writer and helping all these other entrepreneurs.
So my corporate life started in journalism. So I studied journalism at the University of Sheffield. And even before I started my first corporate job, I knew that I wanted to quit. It was one of these things where I knew that getting a corporate job was the kind of next step. It was the next step in, all of the things that you go through in life. You take them off the list. So as much as I didn't want to get a corporate job, when I'd finished studying, I was just like, okay, we'll figure out the path further down the line, but we'll follow the kind of natural process of things to begin with. So I got a corporate job as a journalist. So I say corporate, it was not necessarily corporate in the traditional sense, but it was still smart clothes, office 9 to 5, not allowed to work from home, sitting in front of a laptop for 8 hours a day, like spending as much time, stepping out to get a coffee as possible, but ultimately just feeling very, very restricted, very stuck, and not really knowing how to get out of things. And I did that for a few years.
And were all your friends kind of doing that path? Like, was part of the reason why you felt like you had to just kind of go down that road is because the world around you was doing it?
Yeah, I think that was exactly it. It was because when I was studying, and we're talking over a decade ago now, there wasn't any other option. I mean, of course there was, because that's what we're both doing nowadays. But at the time, it felt like the natural progression of events was to get a corporate job and then, meet someone, buy a house, get a mortgage, settle down. It just didn't seem like there was a different option that was doable at that time.
Yeah, you didn't have the role models necessarily. And I feel like, especially in the last 10 years, so many things have changed with how you build a career and a job and things like that. Okay, so you're in your smart outfit. You're in your nice clothes, doing your journalism job, checking the boxes off. How was that experience for you?
It was interesting in the sense that it was good experience. I think working in corporate gave me a good foundation for showing me what I didn't want to do and therefore guiding me more on the path of what I did want to do. So it was great in the sense that I was new to London. It allowed me to meet loads of really interesting people. It definitely pushed me out of my comfort zone in quite a few ways. So it wasn't a wholly negative experience. It wasn't what I wanted to do with my life, but I always try and look at things optimistically. And I will say there were some positives in terms of setting the foundations for then what I went on to do.
Was there a moment where you really decided like you're not going to do this anymore? Or were you thinking, oh, I might just, give it a few more years and give this like a bit more of a try?
So my plan was to quit my job in summer 2020. Fortunately, there was the catalyst that made me do that before that, because
Right.
if I waited until summer 2020 to quit my job and go freelance, travel the world, then, it probably wouldn't have actually happened because of the pandemic and things. So the catalyst for me was at my second corporate job. And I really loved it. I was working as a branded content editor, but it was at a travel startup and it was very stressful. It was one of these things where the company kept on growing, but they refused to hire people to match the workload that was there. And it got to the point where I like to think I'm someone who works under pressure or works very well under pressure. but I was having new tasks thrown at me from every avenue. I had 3 or 4 different teams of people being like, Georgie, we need this from you. Georgie, we need that. Is this thing finished? It got to the point where I was just pretty regularly crying in the bathroom. And eventually I had a new manager come in who saw that I was crying and sat me down one day and basically said, Georgie, I know that it's a bit tough at the moment, but it's not going to change. So either you need to get on with it and stop crying, or you need to quit. And that was kind of the catalyst for me, really.
Yeah, I mean that's a good catalyst. Basically, someone saying like lump it or leave it, right?
Mm.
And I think this is such a common thing. Like I was having a conversation literally with someone I used to work with at dinner last night, and just the workload just never seems to stop, and you never feel like you can get your head above the water. And the challenge is that you don't want to be seen as a team player. You want to perform. You want to actually do a great job. But where is the realistic cutoff, right? For how much one human can actually manage. And companies don't have much tolerance for people that just can't keep up with an unrealistic, ridiculous workload.
I think that's what it boiled down to. I think I felt like there was only so much more that I could give. And as much as I love a challenge, I like to think I'm quite fast, quite efficient. But it was getting to the point where I was just like, I can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, which maybe sounds quite dramatic. But it got to this point of me thinking, I need something big to change because this is not a sustainable way of living my life. And I was just exhausted all the time. Like, I was getting up in the morning and thinking about work. I was coming home from work and thinking about work and
Yes.
replying to emails. And just, I felt like even on the weekends, I was just dreading going back there because of just everything that I knew would have piled up since I'd last checked my emails.
Right. It's the anxiety of like the anticipation of those emails. It's knowing your inbox is going to be overflowing and knowing that you're not going to get any help. So it sounds like you weren't getting any support. They weren't hiring anybody else. Like I went on a rant on this in one episode recently. It's just like, I think most corporate problems can be solved if we just hired enough people, but they won't.
Yes. And it sounds so simple, doesn't it? But the problem with mine as well is that there was a huge and very fast turnover of people because of this very reason.
Right.
And the company refused to do exit interviews. So we all knew the reason why we were leaving was because we were all burnt out and exhausted. And we kept on trying to leave feedback. And they were like,
Yeah.
nope, we don't want any feedback. We're just gonna live in ignorant bliss.
Yeah, we're not interested. Okay, so you've cried a few times in the bathroom. I think we've all been there. And I think today's kind of work culture almost normalizes crying in the bathroom. Like, okay, one cry, one meltdown once in a blue moon, but
Mhm.
like regularly, I just think this is really wrong. Like,
Yeah,
you stop the
it shouldn't be
tears.
normalized.
Yeah,
Yeah, like you should be able to go to work and feel energized and maybe feel a bit tired at the end of the day, but
yeah,
you shouldn't be dreading work. You shouldn't be exhausted at work and feeling like there is, no light at the end of the tunnel.
yeah, absolutely. I see so many stories about that. Okay, so you've decided to kind of make a change. And so what did that change look like for you?
So everything kind of fell into place at exactly the right time. I think I was very, very lucky. So when I'd been plotting my escape, which was supposed to be summer 2020, I had started doing the research for that beforehand. And what that looked like was seeing if there was a way that I could move abroad and to not initially go freelance or start my own business then, because that felt like too intimidating of a prospect, but finding some kind of midpoint that would support me along the way. Part of that had been finding this company that basically recruits copywriters, social media managers, digital marketers from around the world, brings them to Indonesia and kind of positions them in tourism adjacent companies for 6 months and supports them while they, essentially work for those businesses. I say work, it was a voluntary thing, but fortunately I did have some savings. And I'd spoken to the woman who owned this company and she was like, yeah, you can come out in summer 2020. Don't suppose you can come out any earlier. And at the time I was like, it's not going to be doable. When I had this conversation with my manager, I then immediately went back on my Facebook messages, reached out to the same woman and said, actually, how soon do you need me? Because, might have had a change of circumstances. And she was like, could you be here in January? And this was November 2019. And I was like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I can. So had a formal job interview with her on the Saturday. I think I'd had this conversation with my manager on the Thursday. On the Saturday, I had an official job interview. On the Sunday, they offered me the job. And on the Monday, I walked in and handed my notice in.
Oh my gosh, I love it. That
It was
is
very
like
satisfying.
speedy. Yeah, it is. Well, I think things can happen quickly when you make a decision. So,
Yes.
did you find this company just through like, online Google research?
I found it through a Facebook group for digital nomads from memory. I was doing a bit of research for what options there were out there for someone who wanted to quit but didn't have the confidence to just go all in on starting a business from
Sure.
scratch. And then yeah, I thought this would be a good midpoint and very much just fell into place.
So to clarify, you were working for free? Like it was like a volunteer position or?
Kind of. So we got accommodation for the 6 months and
Yeah.
I got free food and free drink. So I was responsible for, day-to-day living expenses and like flights to Indonesia. But other than that, yeah, pretty much.
That's so interesting. Like this is just something I was not on my radar. I've never heard of this. So I love having these kind of conversations. Like hopefully this sparks ideas for anyone in this digital nomad, like creative space. So then, yeah, I love that. So then you start, you're there. You're writing, and tell me how that process experience started to go.
So I get to Indonesia and my plan was that I knew this was a 6 month role. So I said to myself, I've got 6 months to build up some kind of business or freelancing on the side. So, but 6 months' time, when I finish this internship, job, volunteer thing, whatever you want to call it, then I can hopefully have my own business and even use this as another kind of catalyst, I guess. That did not go according to plan because obviously January, February 2020 was when the pandemic hit.
Mm-hmm.
So what actually happened was I spent 1 month in Bali where they trained all of us up. I then got sent to this tiny island called Gili Trawangan, which is about a 3 hour speedboat away from Bali. And this island is so tiny that people use horse and cart to get around or bicycles. There's no motorized vehicles. You can cycle around the island in about 30 minutes. It's
Wow.
tiny. And I was meant to go there for 6 months and do some digital marketing and copywriting for a hostel that was there. When the pandemic hit, the island closed down and I ended up getting stuck there for 7 months. And whilst that was terrible from a mental health perspective to begin with, obviously very stressful time of everyone's lives, it
Mhm.
actually worked out perfectly for me because then when I no longer had this job, because, there's no point driving tourists to an island that is absolutely closed for tourism, it meant that I just threw myself completely into freelancing. So I got my first freelance writing job, I think within about 2 weeks of being out there. I remember closing my laptop, joining my friends on the beach and being like, right, this is the start of something very, very cool. And yeah, it just kind of grew from there, really. Just really threw myself into building the business over the next 6 months.
So stuck on an island in like the craziest time in history in a tiny with like horses and carts around you. And
Hmm.
you're like, I'm starting a business. We're doing this now. Oh my God,
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Like people talk about their pandemic hobbies. I think I
Yeah.
had two. I think one was scuba diving. And I think the other one was throwing myself into creating some kind of business. And I mean, it was by no means a smooth sailing journey for the first year and a half, I would say, but I didn't have many distractions. I was living on an island where I didn't really have the option to spend money because there's not really any shops
Hmm.
there. There's
Hmm.
nowhere I can go. Yeah, it was almost like a 7 month retreat, I guess, in that sense, because I really
Yeah.
just got to throw myself into it.
Yeah, I could totally see that being the positive side of that, even though it would be stressful and, traumatic time, that you are forced to kind of go insular and just like make this happen. And you don't have the distractions, which is a huge challenge for anyone trying to build a business,
Yeah.
the distraction piece, right? So, what did those first clients look like? How did describe your business as well, like how it started and what it's grown into, but what did it look like in the beginning?
In the beginning, it was a case of feast or famine and just throwing anything at the wall and seeing what stuck, in the sense that I knew that I wanted to be a travel writer, which is what I do nowadays. But probably the worst time in history to try and get into travel writing was the start of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So at that time, I just reached out to as many people as I could, looked for any kind of freelance writing roles, and just decided that I would just give anything and everything a go and see what happened, see how I felt about each step of the journey, and kind of almost make it up as I go along. So my first ever freelance writing client was this Singaporean luxury lifestyle magazine, who really, really lovely people to work for. I ended up writing for them for close to 2 years, I think. They didn't pay very much, but it was my first ever freelance writing role. So that part was fine. And obviously my expenses were very low at the time, which was a huge privilege and, a very lucky opportunity, I think. I then did some copywriting for a business coach who hires virtual assistants. What else did I do after that? Very random things. I had one copywriting client and I wrote loads and loads of web copy for this Middle Eastern wholesaler for him. I started working with this hotel brand in El Salvador, just anything and everything to begin with, really, and slowly refined it more into travel over the years that passed since then.
Wow, I mean, that's some variety, but it sounds like you were open-minded and were like, I'm just going to see what sticks. And you weren't under the pressure that had to like take off right away.
Yeah, I've always been of the mindset of if you don't know what's going to happen, you might as well think, what's the best case scenario? I always try and tell myself,
Mhm.
like, don't think what is the worst thing that can happen. Think what is the best thing that can happen. And that, through all of the highs and lows of having my own business, I think that is one of the real reasons as to why my business has been relatively successful, we'll say.
Yeah, there's one coach out there, I can't remember who it is, but she always says, how good can things get? How good can things get? And like
I
when
love
you,
that.
because if you're spinning out and you're thinking about worst case scenario, you've got to switch it because it's too easy to go down the rabbit hole of like the reasons why it won't work out or, what will happen if things don't work out. But if we just, have a little bit of a mindset shift, I think that just so helpful when you're trying something new.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I think it's so easy to convince yourself out of doing new things. And I think had I spent had I spent a lot of time thinking about, is this a good decision to quit my corporate job? Probably would have talked myself out of it.
Yeah.
But I just kind of took found a catalyst, used it as an opportunity and thought, worst case scenario, I can come back to a corporate job in a year's time if I need to. I was like, give it a try,
Absolutely.
see what happens.
Yeah, I think we forget that. It's like you can always go back to something similar if you try something and it doesn't work out. And I love they use the word catalyst because I think you did find like a catalyst or a vehicle to kind of get you out of the country or get you to spread your wings a little bit. That gave you a little bit of a safety net in a way. So you had
Yeah.
like, a shelter, food. You were like going to be okay.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly that. I think, yeah, all of the essentials were covered. And I think as someone who was naturally very anxious, I think it's exactly what I needed. Just some kind of support so that I had something to anchor me to an extent and give me that creative freedom to do what I wanted, but with almost like a safety net to return to.
Yeah, it's like going on a big European trip on your own, but you're going with like a tour so that you have a little
Mm,
bit of like someone to support you and like get you from A to B kind of thing. Was there a
yeah.
moment when you were like, I can't believe what I've just done. I'm freaking out because I've quit my job and the safety and security of that, and I'm taking this leap?
In terms of a positive, oh my God, or a negative, oh my God.
Either.
I think I would say it has mostly been a positive experience. I don't think there's ever been a time since where I've doubted this decision. Even during the pandemic, I think deep down, I always knew that I wanted to have my own business, that I wanted the freedom to travel the world, all of these things. And as much as there have been, I guess, dips in confidence, even with the dips in confidence, I've always known deep down that I'm now doing the right thing. So I would say there's been lots of positive oh my gods in terms of when I've hit certain income thresholds or when I've like taken on new clients or when I've launched new things and they've gone really well. But yeah, it's been exciting more than anything. And I know there's that thing within your body that your body processes anxiety and excitement in the same way. So
Mhm.
often when we feel anxious, we're actually maybe feeling excited. We just haven't associated one with the other. And I feel like that's been very prominent throughout this journey because often I have had these feelings. But if I really think about it, I'm like, this isn't something I'm anxious about. This is something I'm excited for.
Yeah, I love that you brought up that differentiation or like the similarities in a way because the two can be confused. And I think that's also a really helpful mindset um, kind of hack to do because if you really focus on the excitement, sometimes the anxiety kind of dissipates because they're the same, but they're different. And it's just like it's a reframe. And it's anytime you're trying something new, of course, you're going to be freaking out a little bit, right?
Yes. Yeah. I try and remember this as well of thinking like it's completely normal to feel scared about doing something for the first time. That is completely standard. Like if you don't feel scared about it, then it's probably not something that's big enough or intimidating enough. Do you know what I mean? Like I think you should always feel a bit nervous doing new things.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember the first time I ever got like a real first, like normal, like a paying coaching client. And I felt sick to my stomach. I was like stressed about it. I was kind of freaking out. And then I think within like 5 minutes, I was like, oh, I actually should be feeling this. Like, if I'm not feeling this, then I'm not doing anything new. And this would be really, really weird because I'm doing something so different from what I've done for so long that I need to feel like weird about it right now. It needs to feel almost stressful, or I need to have this experience so that I have confirmation I'm doing something challenging.
Yeah, exactly that. And I was the same when I had my first paying coaching client. I almost felt like I had an out of body experience. I was almost like watching myself do this coaching call and being like, wow, what are you doing?
Yeah,
But it was one of those things again where I loved the thought of pushing myself and like stretching my comfort zone and doing all these things. And I think when I am doing things that make me nervous, I do remind myself, like, do this 5 times. And in 5 times, you're probably not going to feel half as nervous as you do now. You just have to get over that hurdle in order to stretch your comfort zone in the first place.
absolutely. And now you've been, working with lots of clients, you're building your business. I would love to hear a little bit more now about how you're helping other people kind of do what you're doing and maybe avoid some of the mistakes you made or learn from some of the things that you've done. Like, I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, so it kind of started officially, we'll say, because I was I was talking a lot in different Facebook groups for freelance writers. And I kept having people reaching out to me and saying, like, I saw you commented your website here. I saw you left some really helpful advice. Like, can I ask you a question as well? And I ended up doing a lot of like free Zoom calls and things with
Mhm.
people who were either writing already and wanted to grow their writing business, or people who were in the early stages and didn't know how to get started. And I loved it. I was doing this all the time when I was on this tiny island as well. Like, I would go on scuba diving trips. I would sit on the back of the boat and talk to people about like ways that they can get a remote job or all these kind of things. And it all kind of started speeding up because I hired a business coach to help me grow my income with a new avenue, because I felt like I'd reached the cap of what I could earn as a freelance writer without trading more time for money. At this point, I was like, I want a new challenge, want to do something new. Started working with this business coach who the plan was that she would help me to launch a hotel copywriting agency. I mentioned to her in one of our first calls that I was doing all of this free like Zoom coaching for people. And she was like, Georgie, why don't you look into coaching freelance writers? And I was so against it to begin with, especially because like in Bali, there's such a huge thing of people moving there and becoming coaches. And I was like, oh, don't want to move to Bali and become a coach like everyone else. But I started doing it, even maybe just to see if I could do it. And it just spiraled into its whole business. And I love it. It's something I'm so passionate about. Like, I love being able to help people to grow their writing businesses, like giving people the freedom to kind of, it sounds dramatic, but like take their life into their own hands and charge the rates they're supposed to be charging, like assert their boundaries with clients when they need to, and just do all the things that took me a very long time to do myself because I had no one showing me how to do it.
Yeah, and that's it. We need mentors. We do need coaches. We need people to help us. And so I haven't been a writer, but as a graphic designer, and I've been so much in the design community, I understand that kind of feeling and the fears around not charging enough, having boundaries with your time, scope creep when things go like spin out of control and suddenly like they hire you for one thing, but they want 500 things. There are so many lessons to learn about how do you charge and that process. What was it like for you? Like you said you weren't charging very much at the beginning. How did that shift for you?
I had one client who basically made my life hell for about 4 months. And just in all of the ways that you just mentioned, like scope creep, just pushing every single boundary I tried to enforce. And it just acted as a wake up call. It was one of these things where I had most of my clients were lovely. I maintain that most people are lovely. There's just a few people who are not.
Yeah.
And it was just this one client, and it just, what it reminded me of was my corporate job, in the sense that I'd gone freelance to prioritize freedom so I could travel, so I could have my own business, I could do things on my own terms. And then I realized at one point, maybe 2 months into working with this new client, that they were bringing back all of the fears that I'd had when I had this corporate job of being at their beck and call and having loads of extra things added to my plate. And it got to the point where I tried to quit the role. They were like, we'll get you an assistant. I was like, I don't want an assistant. I just want my time back. And it got more and more stressful. And eventually I did part ways with them. They refused to pay 68% of my invoice from memory. So that was a very frustrating thing to happen. But when that happened, it just acted, I guess, as another catalyst. And it made me think, if I want to make this business into a proper business and a sustainable long-term one, I need to be stricter with these things. I need to charge my worth. I need to be doing projects that fulfill me and that I realize are a good use of my time and are paying me the amount I deserve to be paid. And yeah, it just all kind of came together with that one client to make me think this happened like over the course of, I think it was the end of 2020 or maybe 2020. Yeah, I think it was the end of 2020. And at that point, I was like, it's a new year. We're just going to start the new year by laying out some very firm boundaries, some guidelines of what I'm going to do in the business. And funnily enough, when I started respecting myself more, I think other people started respecting me more as well.
I know. So funny how that happens, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that that client decided not to pay you a good chunk of your money that you had earned says so much about them as a client. Like, that's a kind of
Mm,
all you need to know. Like,
yes.
you don't want to worry working with those people. Those are the clients you have to fire. And I know that can be really scary. I've had to do it, like people I'm not going to work with anymore, because you feel like you're closing down a potential, source of income or money. But honestly, like you end up opening the doors to all these other potential clients who will actually respect your time, your talents, and pay you properly.
Yeah, yeah. And I say this to a lot of the people that I coach now because I think when you have that scarcity mindset of thinking I need to keep all of the clients I have because what happens if I can't replace them? It ends up taking up all of the time. And that's time that you could spend marketing yourself and putting yourself in front of the clients who are going to pay you more and are going to respect you. But I think there's definitely a degree of confidence involved with making that decision to cut out the people who don't respect you so that there is space for the people who will respect you to come in.
Yeah, absolutely. I really want to touch on that scarcity mindset because I will, I've done creative work forever. And I will definitely say that the times in my life where I was feeling fear, scarcity mindset, things weren't going to happen, like nothing was going to come my way, when I was just in and feeling really crappy about myself, not having a lot of confidence, I attracted crappy clients.
Yeah.
I attracted crappy projects that kind of went on and on and on, that were frustrating, painful to work through. And so if you, like for me, if when I started really working on my mindset, things shifted in my career. And I know that I've made progress. I have so far to go still, but I know I've made progress because pretty well everyone I'm working, actually everyone I'm working with now are really excellent to work with and were respectful of my time
Yeah.
and pay
Yeah.
me. So, like that is something I think it's a process you have to go through as any kind of freelancer.
Yeah, one quote that I heard recently, and I can't remember where I heard it, but that really made me reflect on progress and mindset and how things develop. And it was like, if you could trade places with yourself 1 year ago, would you? And you like to think that most people will say, no, I wouldn't trade because, I've improved somewhat now. And that was a phrase that
Mhm.
I heard it recently, and it just really made me think that sometimes, even when we don't feel like we've made much progress with things like mindset, if we reflect back on how we would respond to different conversations now or assert our boundaries differently, I think it really does make you think you have made a lot more progress than, maybe we assumed that we have.
That's a juicy one. I love that. And it's so simple to do. I love that one. Thank you for that. That's awesome. The confidence piece, how does that play into it? Because I've heard you say confidence is more than a feeling, right? So tell me more about how confidence has the lessons of confidence and how you've built it.
So, confidence is one of these things that I always assumed I was quite confident until it came down to proving it. And then when I had to prove my confidence by asserting my boundaries, then I realized actually inside I was a very unconfident person. And I think the progression of that went hand in hand with the asserting my boundaries with the horrible client and moving things upwards from there. And what I came to realize with confidence is that it's one of these things where you need to act confident before you feel confident. I think the mistake that I used to make was thinking I will wait until I'm feeling confident. And then when I'm feeling confident, I will start doing these things. And I think that was the main thing that really held me back from taking action in both my writing business and my coaching business. And what I've kind of learned from coaching other writers over the last few years is that a lot of us feel exactly the same in that sense. And especially women, I think, because especially I feel like women have to work doubly hard to find that good midpoint between being confident, but, not being over the top, or at least
Mhm.
being seen as being over the top. And I
Mhm.
think having that justified fear is something that often stops people from acting as confident as they should do because they don't want to be, tarred with the wrong brush, put into the wrong box, things like that. So now everyone that I coach, confidence is just something that we really, really focus on throughout every single step, whether that's them pitching new clients, whether that's them doing things that scare them in terms of self-promotion, whether that's, reaching out to people that intimidate them or standing in rooms that previously they would have felt too small to show up in and things like this. And I just think the more you can guide someone on the path of business growth with a big focus on confidence, the faster they're going to achieve these things.
Yeah, you got to feel the fear and do it anyway. There's that like old book from the 80s. You don't even have to
Yes.
read the book. Literally, that's what you just need to do. Like just feel the fear and do it anyway. What is your like maybe number one tip you would give someone who's feeling a real lack of confidence or struggling with confidence in order, like what do they need to do to build confidence?
Think about where you want to be in 1 year's time. So when I'm thinking of things I want to do that I feel very unconfident doing, I think of Georgie in January 2026. How is she acting? What conversations is she having? Which rooms is she entering in and, being a big personality in? What are the traits that Georgie of 2026 has? And thinking about exactly who that person is and reminding myself that the only way I'm going to get to be that person is by acting like her now. So almost taking the decisions out of your hands of current you, putting the decisions and the actions in the hands of future you, and then channeling that person. And it does feel very intimidating, but thinking about the things that I want to achieve, the places I want to go, the things that I want to have done, realizing that I'm not going to do those things unless I start acting like that person now. And I think that's the fastest way to build your confidence and then become that person.
Yeah, you're speaking my language. This is exactly how I would like kind of approach it too. This is really also ties into any kind of goal setting or manifestation in a way, in that you have to have the vision to
Mm.
of what you want down the line in order to go after it. You need that clarity piece, and that doing that exercise of where you want to be in a year is going to carve out some of that clarity for people.
Yes, the first thing I do with anyone that I work with as a coach is reverse engineer where they want to be in a year's time. So we'll look at what the big goal is in terms of hours that they're working, projects that they're completing, where in the world they're living, and then just breaking that down. And we can then break that down into quarterly goals. We can then break that down into monthly goals, into daily and weekly habits to implement. And suddenly that big goal that suddenly initially felt so far-fetched, you can see how you don't need to look at the top rung of the ladder. You can just think, okay, in order to do this, all I need to do is take the first step, which could be, reaching out to 3 new clients every week or whatever. And suddenly that big goal just feels so much more achievable because you're not looking at the big picture. You're just thinking, what do I need to do first of all to get to this point?
Yeah. And I'm now curious, how many clients do you sit down with when you ask them, what do you want in a year? What does that look like? How many of them say, I have no idea?
Probably most of them, I would say, if I think about it. I mean, a lot of them have vague goals, but often that's why people come and work with me because they know, for example, that they want to grow their freelance writing business, but they don't especially know what that looks like in terms of how much money they want to be
Mhm.
making, how many days per week they want to be working, what sort of projects they want to be doing. So it does take a bit of time for some people. And what I have been doing recently with people as well is this really interesting ChatGPT prompt, which is going out, like I like to do it with the speech to text function because I process things better when I just speak them rather than writing them, which is ironic as a writer. But it's 3 categories. It's like, who do I want to be? What do I want to be doing? And what's the third one? Something like what habits do I want to be following, or words to that effect. And you basically just word vomit all of these things, paste it into ChatGPT, and then say, write me a day in the life of the person who has achieved these things. Then it just spits out a day in the life. So it's like 7 a.m. get up, like 7:30 do a Pilates class. It gives you just a day of like
Wow.
hour by hour breakdown of how you should spend that day. And then after you've done that, you can say to it like, okay, so currently I am A, B, and C. You can see from this prompt above, I want to be X, Y, Z. Please write me a list of daily or weekly or monthly habits that I should be implementing in order to become this person. And that I think is a really good way of just getting that clarity of what you should be working towards in a way that's nice and achievable.
Yeah, I do an exercise with clients called being who you want to be. And the point of it is to step into the version of yourself that is that year from now, 5 years from now, the person you want to be. And what are their habits? What are they eating? What are they wearing? How are they like managing their money? Like everything, you have to really look at that picture. You have to build the vision. And I think one of the most helpful things about working with a coach is that they help you build the vision because it can be overwhelming to do it on your own.
Definitely. Yeah. I think ever since I started working with a coach, I've rarely gone more than a few months without hiring someone else. I just think it is the fastest way that I've grown my business. And I think as long as it's, financially viable, I think it is so, so worthwhile to invest in yourself and just speed up the process. It's like there was a business coach I worked with a few years ago who talked about opportunity cost. in the sense that if you like model it out yourself, chances are you can still achieve the same thing, but maybe it's going to take a year or 2 years. Whereas if you cut to the chase, hire someone who's been there, done that, can speed up the process, maybe you can achieve those same things in 3 months, and then you've got an extra 9 months of those higher income months and, more time, more freedom, all of these nice things.
Absolutely. It makes a lot of sense. And I would definitely want someone like you in my corner, kind of helping cheer me on and things like that. So one of the things that you also dive into is the asserting your worth. And I know this ties into confidence, but what are some of the ways that you have built your personal sense of worth?
This is a very good question. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that before. I think for my personal sense of worth, for me, everything I do in my life is with freedom at its core. I think freedom has always been the most important thing for me. And when it comes to self-worth, I think I try and take actions and I try and build habits and implement things that all tie back to that freedom. So for me, I think developing my sense of worth, I think involves like having a healthy lifestyle, making sure that I'm spending enough time reading and relaxing. And I live right next to the beach, so going for a sunset beach walk every evening and doing all these things in my personal life, which I think encourage me to love myself more, which then also impacts how my business grows, how I talk to my clients, how I kind of show up and how I talk about myself with confidence. I think it's just all of these little factors in my personal life that then rebound into my professional life, which I think then has the rebound effect back onto my personal life, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. It's prioritizing, well, your core value that you just explained there was freedom.
Mm,
So you're starting from a place of there, and then it sounds like you're just honoring the things that you love to do, which is the authentic piece. That's like tapping into who you really want to be, the version of your best version of yourself. So doing those
mm.
walks on the beach, which I'm really jealous of because it's the dead of winter right now in Canada. Like it is so bleak. We're on day 522 of January. It's so bleak.
Oh.
So, like the thought of being on a beach right now is, oh my gosh. But you're honoring what your true desires are.
Yeah. I think I feel very lucky to have built this lifestyle. And I would say basically every day I do wake up and I do think I am very lucky to be having this lifestyle. And I think because I have been doing this for a few years now, I think I don't take it for granted, but I'm also very aware that I can take this lifestyle wherever I want to.
Mhm.
And I think that very much ties into the being the authentic version of me as well. Like thinking, am I happy with this day-to-day lifestyle at the moment? If the answer is yes, we keep doing it. If the answer is no, what is it that I want to change? And then taking the steps to change that part.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is that you're consciously creating your career.
I think that's a perfect summary of it.
Yeah, which I love. Okay, now I know you work with you have lots of different clients, and you have a program coming up. I believe it's called Self Marketing Magic. I really want to hear a little bit about that because is that a group program?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I first started coaching, I started doing one-to-one coaching. And I realized that most of the people that I was coaching to help them grow their freelance writing businesses, it was kind of following a similar pattern. Obviously, everyone's business is different, everyone's at different stages. But in terms of the processes that I was taking people through of building their confidence, setting up some kind of marketing, being consistent with their actions, working on their business attitude and mindset, it was always the same kind of themes. And it got to the point where I was booked up with one-to-one clients and I had more people reaching out to me who were saying like, Georgie, I want to work with you. And I would be like, I want to work with you too, but I have like a 4-month waiting list at this point. And eventually I was like, I wonder if I could take this into more of a group setting. And I think as well, I think when you have your own business, it can be quite lonely if you work remote, if you're traveling a lot, if you don't have a big community of people doing the same thing. And I created it partially with that community element in mind, partially so that I could help more people grow their businesses without having to wait for a few months because no one really wants that. And it just kind of spiraled from there. So Self Marketing Magic is a 12-week group coaching course, and it's all focused around helping people to go through the motions of establishing what they want their business to look like in a year's time and then building out all of the steps to get there. So it has 6 modules that take you through everything from evolving where your business is at now to learning how to pitch clients to getting really crystal clear on who your ideal client is so that you can niche down. It helps you to work on your business mindset with some attitude tips and tricks so that you can do all these things feeling confident. And then at the end, it wraps things up with a module all about efficiency, where you can figure out what the next step is. Like, what do you want to do next in your freelance business? Do you want to look into starting an agency? Do you want to hire a virtual assistant? Do you want to streamline your business? Do you want to start adding more services to it? Just really getting you dreaming about what those next steps are.
And I think group coaching, I've ran group coaching. I love doing group coaching, and I've been in group coaching. There is something magical, and I love that you use the word magic in yours, about like being surrounded by other people that are building their goals and like going for it. Like they're dreaming bigger. And so when you connect yourself to others that are wanting that, I think it's really cool. And you're right. There's just like so many people are asking similar questions, and it can just be an amazing experience.
Yeah, and I'm the same. Like the first ever coaching experience I did was a group one. And I made so many amazing friends. I still
Yeah,
speak to a lot of them
me
now. And
too.
what I've really loved about Self-Marketing Magic, I've run 5 cohorts of it now, and I've met up with quite a few of the people who've taken part around the world. Some of them have met up. They have a little WhatsApp group together. Some of them have hired other people who've taken part in it. And it's just grown into this really lovely community. Like I've met up with quite a few of them just on travels around the world. And every time I do, like we always take a selfie and they post it in the group chat because they all still talk in there quite consistently. I feel like a celebrity every time. It's very nice.
That's so nice. Yeah, I would like encourage anyone who's thinking of, taking whatever business or any goal to the next level, and they're not sure about, they've never done coaching or not sure about hiring a coach, like just try a group coaching program, because it's always going to be a lower ticket item, right? So it's going to be a little
Yeah.
less expensive. And it's just amazing what you get out of it. Like I just feel the value is always there.
Yeah, and I love the fact as well that everyone can bounce ideas off of
Yeah.
each other, because I find one thing that I would say virtually everyone who starts a business is you have this fear that you're asking stupid questions, or you have this fear that everything that you're worrying about is independent solely to your business. And then you enter a group coaching setting, someone else asks that question and you think like, oh, I didn't realize you were struggling with that as well. Or you have people ask questions for things that hadn't even crossed your mind. And when they mention it, you're like, actually, yeah, that's a really good point. So it's such a great way just to get everything you need from the coach at a more accessible price, but also just to learn from each other, make some amazing friends, and then walk away at the end just hopefully feeling really energized and feeling like you've got this amazing support network as
You
well.
do feel energized. And if you're someone who likes collaboration, like that's one of your core values or important to you, like you're going to really love that kind of experience. So that sounds amazing. I heard you use the word consistency. So I love to say consistency for the win. I'm kind of obsessed with being consistent. What are your thoughts on consistency?
I am all about consistency. My boyfriend always laughs at me because everything I do is focused around consistency. I have daily schedules, I have weekly schedules, I have a Trello board that sends me reminders throughout the day to
Okay,
do
well,
things.
I'm not at that level, but I really appreciate it. You need to teach me some things.
Yeah, I think often when people quit at things or they feel like they've failed, it's because they haven't been consistent. And I think that is sometimes a hard pill to swallow because people think they have been consistent. But actually, when they look at the actions they're taking, they realize that they haven't been, which is why I like to track everything, which is very much my, I don't know, type A personality. But I find that when you do work towards something consistently, you will see results. Those results will then give you the motivation to continue. And then you've built the habit and then you've got the discipline to actually see success with it.
Yes. And I think consistency and confidence go hand in hand.
Yes, 100% agree with that.
Like you just can't have one without the other. And when you
No.
do things consistently, you're just going to feel better about yourself. Like it's just inevitable. Like when I launched this podcast, I was like, this is coming out every week. Like
Yeah.
with the exception of Christmas Day, I took off. I was like, this is the commitment I'm making because it will not grow otherwise. Like it just won't.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
you can apply that to anything in your life, anything you're doing. Exercise is the best example of consistency.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you can't go to the gym just once a month and come out looking like an American Ninja warrior.
Apparently. Yeah. And I think as well, when you are consistent, you build that confidence because you're proving to yourself that you can stick at things. And I think so often confidence or lack of confidence comes from the fear that you're not going to succeed. And if you can just make a promise to yourself, you're going to do something consistently, you are going to prove yourself wrong that, you can do the thing when you've told yourself you can't. Then you're going to build the confidence from that as well.
Yeah. And then that ties into the self-trust, which I had a great conversation about this. There's an interview with Kimberly Jarman that we did a few weeks ago. And she talks a lot about that. It's like you have to prove that you can do something over and over again to build the self-trust and actually rewire your brain into feeling that sense of accomplishment.
Yeah, and I think it spirals from there because I think if you can prove to yourself that you can do something consistently that isn't a huge step, then you're going to have the confidence to achieve something bigger. Then you're going to try something bigger still, and you'll see that slowly you're just working your way up these stepping stones of things that previously would have felt completely out of reach. But because you've already proved to yourself you can do all of the smaller things, when it gets to the bigger thing, it just doesn't feel as intimidating.
Yeah, I love that you've just said that. I really hope that inspires people to just take those baby steps and do the small things because it does lead to the big things and you don't just have to like go skydiving right away. Like you can just do the small, small little adventures before you get to that point. I think one of the challenges with that is that we see people online just showing like their biggest, grandest accomplishments. And we're not seeing the day to day that they're doing to get to where they want to go.
Yeah, I think this is like I do spend a lot of time online, especially on LinkedIn and Instagram as well. And I always try and make sure that I speak very authentically about the wins and the losses. I will say that usually with the losses, I try and speak from, the external perspective when I've come through the bad thing, figured out the
You're
solution,
not
got to
in
it.
it.
Because
You've kind of
yeah,
come to the other side. Yeah.
exactly. Because I think that's a lot more empowering for anyone who's reading that and wants help, struggling with the same thing. But I think the reason I do that is because it's so common to see people on LinkedIn being like, look, I made 7 figures in a week and it's my second week in business. And people just lie. And I think that's the other thing we forget, that a lot of things that we see
People
on the
lie
internet, yeah, are just incorrect. Who would have thought?
and they lie on LinkedIn. Oh my gosh. You have an excellent LinkedIn feed. I do encourage people to check out Georgie on LinkedIn because she really does provide valuable content and shares like very authentically. And I thought what you've been posting has been great.
Thank you. I used to hate LinkedIn. I used to think it was just full of annoying, straight white, middle-aged men. But
Yeah,
actually, there are some really, really wonderful people on
there are,
there. And I
there,
think, yeah, it's a
I
lot
do,
more accessible nowadays.
I do still hate LinkedIn in a way, but I see the value of it and there is some great stuff on there. Okay. I want to ask you a question I ask everyone on the show, which is in the spirit of helping people ditch the struggle, what do you think is most important to commit to?
I think it's just most important to commit to yourself, commit to where you want to be in a year's time and write it down, like put together a little vision board, something that you can refer to. I think waking up every morning and reminding yourself of what the big goal is and just commit to it for 1 year. You'll see that if you can say to yourself, this is my year of giving it my all. This is my year of, what's the best that can happen? If I put everything into this and walk away in a year's time, you're not going to have wasted that time, even if you get to the end and find that the path has been slightly different, you're still going to be really proud of yourself for achieving that thing. So commit to yourself.
Yeah, it's amazing because there's no way that you can commit to yourself and commit to a goal for a year, even if you do not achieve the goal per se, that you will not come out feeling better about yourself,
Yeah.
learning new things, and like just feeling more confident. Like it's impossible.
Yeah. And everything's trial and error, isn't it? So I think there is always a learning that you can get from every single decision you make. Even if it doesn't turn out to be the correct decision for one of the, smaller day-to-day things, you're still going to learn something that's still going to tilt the path in the right direction. And you can walk away from that with a bit more knowledge and a bit more data and strategy of what you should be doing next. So I think there is always a good learning to be taken from everything.
100%. Well, where can people find you, Georgie, and learn more about you and your coaching and find you on LinkedIn and all of that?
So my name is Georgie Darling, as in darling, which everyone laughs at me for. So you can find me on LinkedIn at Georgie Darling. My website is The Freedom Route, and that is route spelled Route. And I'm on Instagram at the same name, which is The Freedom Route with an underscore at the end.
Amazing. I'm going to put all of that in the show notes below so that people can find you and follow your travels and be inspired by you. And for sure today, what I took away was to really think about that 1 year plan. I really like that. It's simple and it's like something I think everyone can latch onto.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's been a real privilege.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Georgie. Thank you for joining me today on Ditch the Struggle. You showing up here means so much to me. To dig deeper into the topics discussed today and to learn about my work, visit alanarosa.com. And don't forget to download your free resources while you're there. And if this episode resonated with you, please share with others who also want to ditch the struggle. Go ahead and subscribe to the podcast, leave a rating and a review, and let me know what you'd like to see more of on this podcast. And before I go, I want to leave you with my 3 favorite ways to ditch the struggle. Be your own best advocate, take baby steps for the win, and forget about a linear career path. It's overrated and you are doing just fine. See you next time.